instead of calling out somebody to be Aaron, we're all going to test our Aaron intro knowledge. And so I'm going to share my screen and we're going to do a Slido, and I hope this works. Can everybody see that?
Damn it, I left my phone downstairs. Be right back.
Yes. Yeah, I can
Awesome.
see it. If only my phone will scan a QR code, then life would be great.
You can also use your computer. If you go to slido.com and type in that code, it'll open it there as well. I'll just wait a second for people, but I think I can jump into... Does it say there are no active polls at the moment for everyone?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We get about 20 seconds between each, I think. It should advance after each of the things comes through. I've never done it with a quiz before, so we'll see how this goes. Yeah, so next one. All right, so we should be on the first question now after you enter your name. And we've got a countdown going on. I'm not going to answer, but I am going to keep it on my screen. All right.
Can we select multiple?
No, you just get one. You can only get one. All right, so the results are in. 7% of you went for the meme answer, knowing that it was the right one, so I admire that. All right, next one. Aaron says the best automations are the easiest to what? Forget. Show off. I want to know who answered show off. You can talk to me later. All right, let's move on. 20 seconds might be long, but we'll see. I timed it, it works out fast. What should always be included in your workflows?
Some Jeopardy background music.
I know. Somebody will want to sing it.
This one's really hard.
I know what Alden's going to answer.
The joke is like kind of like
I actually clicked on the meme of Brandon wearing hat because I figured negative time savings is overdone now.
Nobody thinks that time-saving metrics would confuse their leadership. How many MSPs have successfully automated anything without first asking questions?
I know this one. I know this one.
Love the countdown timer.
I know. That's actually a really cool feature because I never know when to press next.
It makes it so exciting, doesn't it?
Sense of urgency. I love it.
0. There we go.
Okay, who did
1,000?
1,000? Brandon. You did 1,000, didn't you?
It wasn't me this time.
What does Aaron always remind us about Discord?
I always do C, but I'm not sure if that's the right answer.
Thank you for
Some
making
people
Friday
find
fun.
Should we remind people that there's no more Rewst staff tagging? If they need the ROC, they've got to tag the ROC. If they need CS, they've got to tag CS.
There you go.
Also, there are some of us that can't post images in the Barnyard channel, and we don't like it very much.
Some of us
That has a
can.
reason, Brian. That has a reason.
I think it's intentional, and it's probably
it's the
our fault. If we're honest.
I actually should have said according to Aaron.
That's
so
hilarious.
I like
love
Rewst and
B.
Dominate.
I
though.
love
That's
B. I'm
pretty
gonna click
awesome.
B. I'm gonna click B.
I love how I offhandedly made this remark to Aaron at one point, and it's turned into something that gets mentioned every week.
All
It's his
right.
I think
What I
Aaron would be
like-
proud.
Go ahead. Be proud.
Yeah, Aaron would be proud of us getting, his shtick down pat.
Yes. And I like the looking at the how many percentages didn't go to the right answer, which ones were like
I
worth
have
it.
a very important question. Do we get a certificate after this? Like one of the actual Treadly certificates?
If you take a screenshot of the final page, you will. Yes. All right. Somebody should post the link to the right conference in the chat as well. 1 of the 89% of us. Yes. Thank you, Brian. All right.
fast.
And last question, I believe.
I was afraid to admit that I had like a water softener installed like a couple months ago.
Oh,
Don't worry, you can get him going when you start talking about shopping cart etiquette or driving slow or
that was
As long
the
as your
most
trash is taken out,
his,
you're okay.
his best one is driving in Europe versus America. That's his very best one. He is so passionate about that.
I haven't heard that one.
I have not heard that one either.
So he goes on this entire tangent of
sand in it.
he talks about this entire tangent of how Europe doesn't have defensive drivers. Everyone's aggressive, and that's why you know what you're supposed to do.
Scott
It's
ran
really
through it?
good.
I thought you went down there.
I was down there initially, but then I determined we
All right.
That's what I said.
So Dustin, Brian, Linda, and Daniel. 8 out of
Oh,
8.
wow.
Dustin with the
Good
fastest
job,
time.
guys.
The hardest question. What is Aaron's opinion about hard water? We'll have to let him know that. Awesome. All right. That was our intro. Hope you guys liked it. I had
was
fun.
great.
I'll take a look at the scores overall. I like the ones that were the wrong. It was like the fully like, I know this is wrong, but I think it's right. So there we go. I have nobody to turn it over to now. On the Rewst side, we're not doing any kind of official agendas here. We did get a couple people to do some demos for us. I think the first person that I bugged was Jared. Jared, are you on?
He's here, but he's muted.
I'm here.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. We're ready for you now. I kind of twisted his arm for the past week, and I was like, all right, let's go. I'm excited.
Yeah, hang on just one sec. I'll finish this later. All right. Let's see. Let me pull up the right browser tab. This is something else I'm working on here. That's not the right one. There's the one. Anyway, so a couple of things that have come up lately as we've been working with other partners. What if we have clients that are already trained on using other forms for different purposes? In some cases, maybe they're already trained on using forms out of Halo. Maybe they're using JotForm. Maybe they're using Microsoft Forms for different things. So what I want to do today is demo a concept of how we can take other automation solutions like Power Automate as an example and tie that back into Rewst automations. So in the example today, this is going to start off with something as simple as a Microsoft form. In this case, this is just a simple process automation request form. So someone fills out the form. And when they submit that form, we're passing that through a workflow here in Power Automate. So we have the trigger method here, and the first thing that we have is the trigger is when a new response is submitted via form. The next thing that we're doing is we're loading the response ID from that response. And then we move into an action where we basically build essentially a JSON template with each of our question responses that we get. So once we have that template established, we're then able to use an HTTP action here, where we simply have a Rewst webhook trigger created. And we create a body that we use in this compose action previously. So as we do that, on the Rewst side, we have a simple trigger set up as a webhook listener. Nothing fancy. It's all the standard defaults. And of course, we have a webhook secret key that's set up here. And as we look at the execution results, we'll see that we're able to successfully record all of those form inputs directly from a Microsoft form through Power Automate and able to pass that back into Rewst. So with just a little bit of effort on the Power Automate side, we're able to take things out of other solutions and pass those back into Rewst to build them and expand out on our automation capabilities inside of Rewst. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Jared? We're getting a lot of hand claps.
I like the idea of using Power Automate. Why did you put the compose there? Can't you just forward the entire raw body to Rewst and have Rewst handle the rest?
Well, when you do that, so when you look at the, actually, let's see, I'll show you why.
Cool.
So as we go through the run history, what you'll see from the form response, let's see if I can find it here. The actual body you get from the form response is in JSON, but unfortunately, you're going to see the GUID for each question, not the actual questions themselves.
That is so gross.
So in order to take that and make it usable, we take the compose action and we build that into something that's readable. So at least with that, it gives us the ability to have some control over what those inputs are going to look like in our workflow. The only real downside of all of this is the HTTP action that's here does require a paid Power Automate license. There may be some other actions that are here, but I didn't find them in the hour and a half I spent last Friday playing with this. So there could be some other options that are out there. That's my disclaimer. But the version that's here now does require the Power Automate premium licensing. But it's just this one action that requires it. Everything else should be under Power Automate free.
Jared, what if you drop the message in a shared mailbox? Drop it, have the form results sent to a shared mailbox, and you just put a webhook listener or just listen to that shared mailbox and pull the result out. That way you don't have to cost.
I could probably do something like that as well. Just felt like it was unnecessary extra steps.
I mean, Microsoft makes Exchange be involved in everything they do, so why not you as well?
Yeah, there was a time and place, but those days are gone.
That's super cool. I love seeing the stuff that integrates various other tools for their strengths and pulls them together. I think that's awesome. I was just playing with Rewst Web. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, by all means, go ahead, and then I'll wrap up.
No, I was just saying I was just playing with Discord channel webhooks, and I was like, there's so much that could be done with that simply without even needing anything else. And anyway, I thought that was neat. Go ahead.
So the real purpose for doing something like this isn't to get someone using a different version of a form. Think about your larger enterprise clients that you might already be supporting. Maybe they're co-managed environments that you're already managing. This gives you the ability to come in and meet them where they may already be working and start to provide additional value with, potentially automation as a service kinds of concepts where you can come in, take what they're already doing, and then expand on that within your own tool sets. And better yet, actually own what it is that you're building for them.
Absolutely. I wonder if you can this is a random thing. Every time I see those reactions going up, and I know that you can see them when you're looking at like Discord APIs and stuff, made me wonder whether you could see that from a Teams. Does a Teams API or like the Microsoft events thing show you all the people
It
who are
logs
throwing?
everything.
It is
Yeah, that would be so cool.
It is absolutely insane.
so
It's,
annoying.
every single action, every single click a person does in Teams is logged in the audit log. It is a fire hose.
So you see if somebody just
posts-
pins one person for the entire call.
Yes.
Probably.
And it posts it posts back as an HTTP request if you have a bot listening. Very fun to try to catch all of those.
Hello,
Alden,
Nikki's dog.
I was gonna say, who's talking? There's a dog on your screen. Cool. So I was going to ask Alden, when do you want me to push over to you? Do you want me to go? Brandon, let's go to you first, if you're good with that.
Yeah.
I need like 5 minutes to get settled in here.
Cool. Yeah, we'll take your time. I want you to be safe.
I will take 5 minutes. Hello, everyone. Welcome from the bedroom at my dad's house out of state. Apologies if the audio or video is a little crunchy today. But a quick thing I wanted to go over. This is not a workflow. This is how we are starting to handle stuff internally over at ZenTop. We have a large number of workflows that we're working on developing to provide to our customers, both by default when we take them on and upon request. And we needed a good way to document what do we have available, what do they do, who's making changes to them, and where do we get them from as our workflow crates grow. So I am working with one monitor here, so we'll make sure that this works hopefully properly. Share window, provision. Is everyone able to see the Hudu documentation page? Awesome. So we have here one of our workflows. We've shown this off before. It is in the workflow forum on the Discord, and it did just get an update from our latest ZenTopper, Jeremy, which is awesome. That consolidates a few things together, makes it a little bit more efficient. It is our bot framework provisioning workflow. This takes every step in my blog about how to get the bot framework provision in Azure and makes it a workflow that just does everything for you, which is awesome. So the way we are looking to start documenting this is going to have a few different steps. First up, we're going to have our TLP classification. Everything we do for us internally and customers follows the traffic light protocol. If you're not familiar with it, it's a good thing to get used to. It's something that's just provided for free by CISA, a way to classify what is internal knowledge, what can be shared with customers, what's open to everyone. Really easy to follow. After that, we have our workflow overview. This is just a quick little blurb about what exactly it does, any sort of supporting documentation. So I have my blog linked here, and then a link to the workflow itself. We have our initial time savings, because you always want to have time savings on your workflows. And then we move on to the inputs. These are going to specify which inputs are on the workflow, what their names are, what type of input they are, and the description of it. And then we go into the steps. Each one's going to have a brief description of what it does, any API calls attached to it, transitions, and outputs published as context variables. So begin, we'll do nothing, just initialize it. Get tenant info, we'll start to see the API calls on here. So we're going to send a GET request to receive organization details, what the method is, what the base URL is, what the endpoint is, and then our two transitions. On success, we're going to go ahead and proceed to create app registration and publish the tenant ID context variable. On failure, proceed to error reporter, publish error with message, failed to get tenant information. and so on. We're just going to document each of these. They're not super verbose, just kind of a top level, here's what's happening in the workflow. We'll go all the way through the end. We have a few extra transitions here for if we're getting specific responses for provisioning state succeeded, failed, in progress, accepted, or running, and then what to do for the retry logic. Lastly, at the very end, we have a change log. This is going to note who changed it, when they changed it, what the associated build ticket number was, and what the change detail is. If we need to go ahead and import this into a customer environment, we have the export of the workflow under the files here, ready to go. And most importantly, because we're using Hudu, we can start to utilize something really cool called folders to organize how our workflows are laid out. Hint, hint. So yeah, that's just about that. Any questions on this?
I have one, Brandon.
Yes.
You're handwriting this, or you're generating a lot of it out of the workflow itself?
A lot of it is generated. So rather than using RoboRoosty for this one, I made a custom ChatGPT bot that we can share out through our organization account that I paste the raw workflow JSON into, and it spits out a consistent format for each of those actions.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, Reed, I muted you. If you wanted to speak, you can unmute yourself. I wasn't sure if you were trying or not. Not Kimball. Sorry, there's another one. I saw you unmute and then mute again.
I was like, what? I'm quietly over here minding my own business.
I saw that. Okay, thank you, Brandon. We'll give Alden a few minutes. Let's have, do I have somebody else who was going to demo? Oh my goodness, if we talked about it and you were going to demo, please let me know, because my brain is mush today, but I do believe that Alden is the only other person that I had, and then the rest was just going to be anybody who had anything they wanted to talk about or bring up, ask questions. I do see that Tim is on the call.
I could do some live
usually some
building if there's no one
for
else.
Brandon in the chat.
There's Alex. There's a question here. Do you suggest using Hudu to document the Rewst workflows, and that is how you organize the workflows instead of organizing them in Rewst?
Yeah, so this is a bit different for us because we're acting as a service provider for folks who have Rewst. Zentop is a consultancy that helps people implement their process automations. So we're doing this because we have a number of workflows that we are regularly exporting and importing into customer environments, and sometimes need to reference from multiple different people on our build team on how stuff is changing, what's going on there. And it became a bit more efficient to check that information within the documentation platform we're already utilizing to document specific processes for customers, their credentials, and things we need to get to help configure their systems. So for a single organization, our MSP, sister MSP, ETOP, has gotten by all right with using tagging within the platform to organize workflows, and using the in-workflow notes feature to document specific parts of it. But as you start to build a team of folks on your team who are building these automations, it may be a good idea to extend that into a platform like Hudu. For me, having any documentation is better than none. So whether you do it in the workflow or in Hudu, it's always good to have somewhere where it's not just reference it later.
Couldn't tell if that was somebody asking a question or I think it was just a unmute. Oh, okay, cool. All right, that's cool, Brandon. Thank you for answering that. Was there anything else? I don't think there was any other questions here. Daniel, you said you've got something you can show off. Cool.
Yeah, this will be pretty quick. If we're just trying to fill a little time here. So we wanted to have more integrations with ImmyBot. Rewst already has a ton of integrations, so we utilized the Rewst integration for this example is DNS Filter to create an integration in ImmyBot for DNS Filter, because ImmyBot allows custom integrations. So it's actually really trivial. It was a good thought by our automation engineer to think of doing this. The only real downside is it hits the webhooks a little heavy, but the core concept I think works really well. So I'll just show real quick. Let's make sure we grab the right browser window. All right, there we go. In DNS filter, it is basically as simple as like in setting a few endpoints of, hey, do we get the list of agents? Do we get a list of organizations? That sort of thing. And then in DNS filter, we create a custom integration. A custom integration, sorry, I'm not in DNS filter, in ImmyBot. Custom integration is literally just a PowerShell file that defines how to hit endpoint, like how to figure out list endpoints, how to list companies, that type of stuff. And so you're really just kind of dropping the endpoints in, and then telling in this one PowerShell file, telling Immy how to categorize all those things, and then that comes into the integrations list, which I'm not going to show you because it'll show all my company names. But you go into the integration list and pair them just like any other integration. Immy did a great job of simplifying it. So all you have to do is, all right, have a defined function that pulls a list of computers, and then that goes to a webhook in Rewst that gives a list of computers, and you have an integration. Like, there's almost not much to show because it's so simple. It really is just create a webhook in Rewst and create a single script, which is, there's a template for it. You just basically copy the template and add in the webhook calls, and that's it. Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and then it'll work for anything Rewst has integration with. Now ImmyBot can have integration with.
Love that. I have a question for you, Daniel, that is slightly off topic. What are you printing behind you?
It is a picture frame, part of finishing up Christmas. I've already got half of it. The other half's coming off. Just a picture frame, nothing too fancy. But it goes with some Christmas gifts I made. I shared in the MSP GeekCon channel earlier today.
Cool.
But I made some shadow boxes, and so I need frames for them to go in. So that's what's coming off the printer right now.
That's cool. I am like teetering on the edge of getting myself one of those, like about to tip over it. So every time I see it, I'm like,
Get it
they
good.
do it. They're pretty good.
P1P and be happy. They're amazing.
I got one for Christmas, Ashley, so we can do things for the conference.
nice. Yeah, I would just be printing the most obscure stuff. Be like, nobody ever sells this crossover, and I want that crossover to exist, so I'm just gonna make it.
Rockless.
Awesome. All right, Alden, welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Daniel, for showing that off. Daniel, was that the first time that you showed something off for us that you've been doing?
It is. Yeah.
Welcome to 2024 Open Mic presenters. Thank you. All right, Alden, over to you.
All right, so I'm gonna do the thing that probably is gonna bother Ashley. How many of you have been using Rewst for a year plus? Go ahead and raise your hand in Teams. Just I want to see that number. How high of a number we can get.
I like how it counts the number of hands up. So there's 25, 26.
See how many people are even in here. I mean, there we go. That's probably a third, maybe half. I don't know how many people. Anyways, so like many of you, I started out making workflows, and I don't know, my workflow. You know, you start making your first workflow, you're like, oh, this is really cool. Get like 5 actions. You're like, this is really awesome. And then suddenly you're like, wait, but what if, you know, you want to add a little bit more to your actions, and then you want to add a little bit more to your actions, and then and more, and you end up something like this. Again, I'm sure everybody has been here once or twice, and then you get stuck in the I need to refactor this phase. So I discovered a little trick the other day, and it is a very quietly kept secret that I started sharing with some friends on how do you sub workflow something like this. Do you go to each block and manually go here, copy it to your clipboard, paste it on a new one, and move on? I said, no, that's for something like this, something small scale like this, that's a lot of work. Something big scale, something like the user onboarding workflow, I mean, forget about it. So instead, I'm gonna go ahead and take my my adaptive card actions here, because that's something that's gonna be blowing up for me. So I found this great feature called clone on here, and so if you clone it to your company, and you kind of do like a sub workflow, and you say Teams message adaptive cards handler, and you would go and pull up our workflows here, and so now you got a copy of your handler, and what do we do from there? So now we've got 2 of these giant Mondo workflows. We'll just go ahead and kind of fix half of that. Come on, but don't play with me here. We'll go ahead and fix half of that and get rid of some of this art and stuff. There's a delete button underneath my mouse, I bet. There is. Great. So now we have a sub workflow. And just kind of jumping back, taking a look at what initially was going in there. Looks like we had a basically if the body type is invoked, it passes up here, and this starts to do actions based off of sub actions if the value is this, that, the other thing. So it looks like for the base we really need to have the body in there. So we'll say that this guy is going to have a workflow input item of body, and all of a sudden we now have ourselves a nice sub workflow. I can go ahead and find the page I was looking for. I can refresh it, and instead of all of that junk up top, which as an example, that's 8 actions that I've got to maintain and make sure it's documented for my team to maintain. And instead I can just go ahead and look up sub here and grab my my sub for my adaptive card actions, and replace this whole junk with my sub workflow, and really kind of make things more manageable once they get out of hand and you get a team of teams going on. We'll just say body is ctx.body. Yes, I know I'm crazy for not using the ginger burger. And yeah, we are totally we have now sub workflowed my adaptive card handler. And I guess I'll clean this up and say adaptive card action. Now, those of you who have been here for a year and have accidentally made monoliths like this, how many of you are stuck with the giant workflows that are overwhelming to sub workflow, because that was exactly kind of my big point. And I know I've talked to quite a few people about it, how great it would be to have a sub workflow button. And then I was like, wait, that is a sub workflow button. So just a fun little spring cleaning / Christmas present to everybody. And yeah, I think that yes, Brandon, you did some ID bogey. Like Kelvin has clap at the end of one of his. And so yeah, that was kind of a really cool, like, mind-blowing moment. I'm sure Workflow Editor V2 can do that as well, but that one's really nice for me. Brandon, you actually still have your hand up though.
I have a question.
I can't promise you have an answer, but go ahead.
So when you have a team of teams on your team that are using the team's workflow to send Teams messages, for example, how do you advise your team on which actions to drag out into a sub workflow and which ones should stay in the parent workflow as their own thing?
Well, after taking the Rewst 202 courses or 200 courses, pretty much everything should be sub workflowed. My team of teams team up on teaming the workflows, and essentially pop quiz at the end. But but really, I mean, the more that you can sub workflow, the better, because that's the more, in a traditional programmer mindset, that's your subroutines, that's your procedures, that's your consts, your functions, whatever. And so at that point, you can break those out, and then you can have a wonderful team of teams building and iterating on the functions, rather than having to take turns saving the primary function, that if one of you hits save at the wrong time, the whole company catches on fire and the building's upside down. So that's something that I've been kind of cooking up the past few weeks, meant to show it off, and I'm hoping that I can get. I was trying to get like an Eddieism going on, but the Zen wasn't there yet. I wasn't quite at the top of my Zen game. So hopefully, though, we can get one of the education folks to kind of take that and really expand upon that, because I think that is an amazing idea to break down your workflows and not get stuck at task 0 bar F3987. It has unreachable conditions without trying to figure out where the guy is. I know we've all seen that error message, and it's very descriptive if you know how to describe it. But if not, it could be painful. But I did this process like 3 times today already for different things that I was like, I got a loop that I'm gonna have to like iterate through another variable and set a loop inside of a variable, and that just sounds annoying. So I'll just sub workflow it, because the whole thing should have been a sub workflow anyways.
Thank you, Alden. That is actually like super helpful.
Sorry, Ash.
Go.
I was going to
No,
say
go.
on the sub workflow, when to and when not to, just to expand on that a little bit. It's really interesting in this particular environment. If you're just thinking about writing code that's going to execute on your computer, we become very, very spoiled, and we tend to favor ease of getting to our result over raw optimization, because it's just not necessary. It takes too long to do the optimization for the minimal measurable gain that you're going to get. But when we're working with APIs and things, and you start talking about repeated calls across the net and the amount of information that you're pulling, you can't just necessarily, and we all know this, right? Like you don't just call Microsoft Graph and say, give me everything for a user, when the only thing you need is whatever, the validate the address or something. We can't just ask for everything all the time.
Well, you know what? I can totally. There's a history button now in Rewst. I can undo what I fixed this morning, which is like an actual more realistic example of this. And sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you there, Reed.
No, that's okay. I think when we're trying to decide what to, if you were just refactoring regular code, you say, will this be reusable? Is it reusable? That's a reason to factor it out, right? But then it's how generally reusable is it? So again, with what we're dealing with specifically here, we have to be careful because we might say, yes, getting user information is reusable, but now do we have to provide a whole series of optional filters so that we can specify how much of the user we're going to get each time we reuse that piece of code? So we get this scaffolding creep. And so then ultimately, how many times will this subroutine be used in this exact form? So, I've found where sometimes generalizing it into a sub workflow really isn't the answer because it's so subtly different each time you do generally the same thing. And it's such a few number of tasks to get there that it's better to just recreate it with the one-off uniqueness that's needed. Am I making sense there as far as how it can be hard to...
I agree with
how to determine. I mean, that's always a big one is how to determine when to work. When
Well, that's why I don't like to just say whenever possible, right? Because sometimes you might actually make yourself more work than you're ever going to benefit from.
It kind of comes down to how much namespace you're going to have to be throwing back and forth between sub workflows, right?
Right. That's a huge component of it.
And so here's a realistic example. I've got a Teams bot where I can have a person send a list of 100 items to it. And I got to iterate through, I have to parse the Teams message, which is already very fun, as any of you have done and know. And then I was iterating through it, and then suddenly I was like, I got to send a confirmation or a decline message also, which is that this whole and I mean if I could put a block around this and say do this whole thing with items, and then I said wait, I can't do that. That is a sub workflow, and so that's where I ended up turning that into my sub workflow, where now I can iterate through it with items and get a nice pre-processed list to pop out and tell someone not to bankrupt our company overnight.
Yeah, and so that's one of the beauties of this platform is that some of the sub workflows just become apparent. Like, oh, this definitely should have been, because it's just easier to even implement the solution that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, trying to determine which steps of your process justify it can be a challenge.
Sometimes it's a challenge, like based on need, like you were saying, Alden. But then also, like, how do you, like, the one place where I always struggle, and I can actually show something that I accommodated for this, maybe just to like, as an example of, somebody who maybe doesn't know the technical details sometimes, but I know how to hack through solutions. I can't always tell when to use a with items versus when to use a sub workflow versus when to like code in a loop of some sort. And the ability to do all of those things, but at the same time not really know which one is the right one is awesome, but also very dangerous. So here's an example of something that I made where one of my problems that I always had was like Discord will allow you to return a specific like messages from a specific channel. And then you can give it like query parameters like a message ID before and a message ID after, which are unique snowflakes based on their own timestamp. I actually posted the details about how to convert that from a timestamp in Discord, but the limit there is 100. And so it's like if you wanted to get every single message from a channel, you need to keep looping through that. And so I was playing with this. I'm like, well, how do I do that? I'm like, well, I don't know how to do it as a with items because I don't know how many times it needs to happen. And I can't use a while or something that I'm aware of within my actual loop. I could do it in a sub workflow, but then I'm running into all kinds of complications, pulling back up the, is that this, do it again. And so what I ended up doing was doing the API request, and then I'm doing my simplified message where I'm actually pulling down the information that I want to see that looking like. But then I'm saying like, if the count is 100, give me that last message ID and append all of the details that we just did into a new full message list, adding it to the other one. And then if it is 100, it comes back up and it does this again with that message ID as the after to get the next list. And it'll keep doing that until it's no longer returning 100. And then once it's done returning 100, it will just do the final append of that information. And then the end result is me getting every single message looped through until all of them have been returned between those dates. And it works. I don't necessarily know if there was a better, more intentional way to do that with Rewst, or whether I should have used a sub workflow or a with items or anything else.
That's 100% how I would have done it. Now, I'm not one to say how it should be, but that's 100% how I would have tackled it.
Yeah, you should be able to do this with a sub workflow and with items. The only time I ever find myself looping is when I'm working with bad APIs that time out all the time and I have to create retries and just literally run the same command again. But otherwise, if you can work off of a list, that means you can work off of a with items.
So then how would I do that in this case? So like, would I start with that? Like, would I do something here and then do something with items below, or would I do something with items right on this one? How does it know?
So if you're getting, you're getting a list of messages, right? I didn't catch like.
Yes, this is calling the messages list from a specific channel. And then I'm giving it the parameter of saying every message after this message ID. And then the max limit that you can return is 100 of messages.
Yeah. So and then, so you're collecting a list, right?
Yeah.
So if you have that list, and then what does your next action do? Is it
to check whether there's 100 items in that list or not? And then if there is 100 items, I get the very last ID from that list of 100. And then I use that last ID as the after message ID.
You're basically doing a pagination there.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that case, you might have to loop.
So this is the most, that was my thing. Like, I don't know if this is efficient. And so I think other people might be nervous about like, oh, maybe I didn't do something effective and I don't want to show it off, or it works for me.
So I would still do this within a sub workflow. That way, if the API improves and they get a better way of paginating, or we update the integration to paginate better, then you would be able to just change those actions out in the sub workflow without having to change all the workflows that cause it. So that's another reason to use sub workflows, is when you find yourself using the same combination of actions over and over again for stuff like this, where there may be a better way later. You kind of hide that behind the sub workflow, and that way you know what you're putting into it and what you expect to get out of it, and let that logic be in there and be updated.
Mm-hmm.
Except that I think in this case, this is the sub workflow. right? Because if you were to condense those middle bits down, there'd be nothing but a start sub workflow
absolutely,
end.
Yeah. This
and so
is the
that's
sub
where
workflow.
I was going back and forth in my head because I was like, all right, so like, because I don't want my sub workflow to do anything necessary at its level, that it should just be doing, I'm assuming it should just be doing the action that it's meant to do and then reporting up the results. So here's an example of how I've done that. It's actually been really helpful for me is I created a sub workflow that just takes a user information and then whether to add them to roles or whether to remove them from roles. And then I input that information and then its output returns to me the actions that were taken. And then that makes it really easy for me to just plug that in. And I made this workflow that's super valuable to us in less than 5 minutes. Like a bunch of these other pieces could also be that. And so I wanted to kind of build up a collection of like these little Discord sub workflows. But this one I was really struggling with because I was like, well, do I just pull back the last message ID if it's more than 100? Do I do all the looping in the sub and then return the entire list up top? Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, these sound like really good sub workflows that are, as Reed said, this is the sub workflow. Like this is just a good example of it. You want something to be small, something that ideally does just one thing. And then if, that one thing should be clearly defined. And then if there's something in it that, could also be another sub workflow that just does one thing, then make that a sub workflow. But
thanks, guys. Thanks for the validation and assistance. We've got 9 minutes. If anybody else wants any validation or assistance or has any questions, now's the time. It's the last time in 2024.
I can sort of leak something and show something that I've been working on at the same time.
Only if Aaron will be mad at you.
Is it folders? Is it folders?
It's no.
Ah!
Yeah. Okay, what screen do I? Is this the right screen? You guys see this?
Yeah.
Workflow? Okay, perfect. So, what I am testing, and I had a use case for someone who's looking to enhance their reporting, is the generic GraphQL action. So what I have here is, I guess what I needed is I wanted to report on essentially what each one of my, I wanted essentially to group workflows by their time savings. So what I have here is, this is Pedro Aviary, one of our test organizations. I can see this is the total time savings for that organization. And then below here, I have for each workflow in Pedro Aviary, the total number of executions, the seconds saved, the workflow ID, the name of the workflow. And then what I'm working on now is getting success and fail numbers in here so I can see like success and failure rates. And that way we'll be able to do reporting on a per workflow basis to see what the most used workflows are, how many seconds they save, what the success rates are, and all that fun stuff. So what I have here is first, I just list my organizations, just a Rewst action, list organizations. And then for each one of those organizations, what I'm doing, first thing I'm doing is I'm getting the parent organization, which is Pedro Aviary. And then I'm taking all of Pedro Aviary's sub-organizations just to the first level and running this same sub-workflow on it. And so what I have here in this sub-workflow is get time saved by workflow. And this is our new, it's behind a feature flag right now. We're testing it out, making sure that it doesn't have, we don't have any security flaws or anything like that in there. We have our new generic GraphQL request. And what you can do here is you can choose whether you want a query or a mutation. And then if I chose query in this, and you can see all of our, or not all of our, but the GraphQL endpoints that we have made available. I don't know what me is actually. That's a weird one. I have to check that. So what I've chosen is the time saved group by workflow action. And then from here, I choose the response fields. So the fields that I want returned. I choose the fields that I want to send. So unfortunately, we don't have, like, there's a few ways that we can make this easier in the future, but you have to actually identify what fields you want to send and what fields you want to respond. So the way to figure this out now is trial and error, which is of course less than ideal. So what I did is I ran this without any variable values or response fields, and it spit out, you need to have org ID, and updated that. And then when I had that, it also, or I guess it also responded with, you need to have X fields, or you need to choose fields to return. And through trial and error, I figured out all the fields I needed. And yeah, so, and then I just calculate the total time savings using Jinja. But anyway, what I wanted to show was mostly this GraphQL action and just the things that you can do with it. We have a whole bunch of different endpoints that are available here, including, I think, things around crate unpacking and that type of stuff. So you can see all of your crate configs and everything like that. The crate's available to you. But yeah, I'm at a point where I have all the net data in the necessary format that I need, and all I have to do is add the success and fail messages here. And then this can be made available to the customer who's requesting some additional reporting and stuff like that. But yeah.
And Daniel, assuming that customer is not me, even though I think it may be me, does that also go like a layer deeper into how many actions were performed on each sub workflow or each workflow?
It does not. So there are, like, I've been playing around with a whole bunch of our different graph endpoints, and we have we have a few that are around tasks. So we have task execution stats and task logs. So you can get that sort of information back.
That would probably be what I need is that, because I have some that go 8 times and some that go like 485 times.
Gotcha. Yeah. This one actually also includes the task level time savings that is available. It actually stores this. So you could make a task level time savings report using that graph endpoint as well, which is kind of cool. But yeah.
Tell us about the purple glow.
I quite honestly didn't even notice that. I wonder what that is.
Brian called you a liar.
It's the magic that will bring us folders.
Yeah.
Just touch the purple light.
We made it to the end of the open mic that doesn't exist. And there's a lot of us that stuck around for this call. So thank you for joining us. And I'm glad that I was able to be here to host you guys. Final quiz question of the week. What signs us off of this call?
Happy birthday, Adam.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
So let's see if these 3D printed parts go together like they should. Oh yeah, perfect. Slide right together.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining us. Jump in the coop if you have any further questions. Talk to you later. Talk to you next year.
Bye.
Yeah.
Meow.
Bye. Bye.